Welcome to the Forged in the Barrens star rating review, and this time we're doing it all in one mega video. The Madman! Special note, in this particular review, there are going to be a lot of 5-star ratings. A lot of these cards are good and we'll see play in the new meta, and I think that all the decks should be fairly competitive with each other. I anticipate that every class is going to have at least one tier 1 deck, with the notable exception of Demon Hunter and possibly Hunter. And you might say, wait, that's a lot of tier 1 decks. And I would say, yeah, that's right. I think that Blizzard has gotten a lot better at balance. And furthermore, they have taken an active stance in making sure that if something is out of balance, that it gets hit a little bit. So let's start with the very exciting Demon Hunter Death Rattle package. Tusk Piercer, Razor Boar, you got Razorfen Beastmaster, Vengeful Spirit, and Death Speaker Blackthorn. And it's all nice and lined up. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, 7 drop. They might as well tie it in a bow and present it in a package. All these cards, 1 star. It would seem like the flavor of Demon Hunter Death Rattle is to position it as a tempo-based deck, and while you can cheat out the 4-mana 5/7 Death Rattle, that seems to about be the extent of unfairness, and I just don't think that's good enough. There's really not much to say other than I think this might be a viable option once there's more good Death Rattle, so I think this might have been a prepare the Demon Hunter for the next expansion, or possibly even the mini set. Other bucket you have is the aggro bucket. You got Sigil of Silence, which is a guaranteed dealing damage to the face. And I'm gonna give that 1 star just because I don't believe that that is worth a card. To lock in the victory is the way that I would think of that card. You play it and then you try to win next turn. Cute idea, but not worth a card. And then Fury, 3 stars. A replacement for Twin Slice, but it sure is significantly less good than Twin Slice. But hey, I think it does make the cut into what will be a version of aggro Demon Hunter that I think is less good than many of the other aggro decks that you can play instead. And then you've got control Demon Hunter options. Vile Call, which is good stats for the cost, but as usual, I believe that there aren't enough tools to make value or control Demon Hunter a thing yet. It just compares unfavorably compared to the likes of Priest, Warrior, and Warlock, just as examples. You got Kurthus Ashfallen, who clearly is intended for a value / control option as well, but same reason. While Kurtrus is fairly good in terms of stats for cost, I just don't think that that deck archetype is good in Demon Hunter right now. And then finally, you have Sigil of Flame. That's actually potentially a legitimate option. There is one Demon Hunter deck out there right now, which has some success. The higher ranks you go, the better it is. It's called 1-turn kill Life Steal Demon Hunter. That deck keeps most of its tools, and for the tools it does lose, it can actually slot in Sigil of Flame. A nice stall to just survive the early game aggression into the late game where you'll pull off your combo. But still Sigil of Flame 3 stars because I think it is not as good against the particular set of decks that's going to crop up with this expansion. All in all, I anticipate that Demon Hunter is going to be the one class that will perhaps not have a deck that's competitive at tier 1, but it'll be really close, with at least 1-turn kill Lifesteal Demon Hunter being tier 2 and potentially tier 1. Druid's in a pretty interesting spot. They're getting 2 deck archetypes this expansion, I believe, which will be quite successful. The first one will be good old Token Druid, Thorngrowth Sentries, Guff Rune Totem, and Pride's Fury. I do believe that all 3 of these cards will actually see play in a tier 1 Token Druid. Therefore, I am rating Thorngrowth Sentries 5 stars, Guff Rune Totem 5 stars, and Pride's Fury 3 stars. I'm not as certain as on Pride's Fury. Token Druid does not lose that much. Dreamway Guardians is easily replaced by Thorngrove Sentries, and Savage Roar and or Soul of the Forest. Soul of the Forest is still in, by the way. May get replaced by Pride's Fury. It's debatable which one's better. Notably, Guff Rune Totem seems to be very, very scary. A lot of cheap nature spells. You can scale off of Guff Rune Totem pretty fast and get some explosive starts off, I believe. And then you've got a very exciting package, something I'll call the Celestial package. So obviously you started off with Celestial Alignment, and there's also going to be Druid of the Plains and Thick-Hide Kodo. All three of these cards, 5 stars. I am prepared to call it a tier 1 dream. What became clear is that if you play Celestial Alignment and then you survive your opponent's turn, you're probably going to win the game. Now, to do that, you have to play a 7 mana do nothing spell, and then your opponent gets the first play. But if their one play doesn't blow you out of the water, alongside whatever they had on the board, you're actually just going to win, because you play Nourish, you get 2 mana, and you ramp, and then you play a bunch of stuff, such as Druid of the Plains, which both kills one of their guys and then transforms into a huge taunt. Thick-Hide Kodo gets you surviving until you get to the Celestial Alignment, and also you can pull Thick-Hide Kodo out from the good old Guardian Animals. By the way, fun fact, after you cast Celestial Alignment, you can pull Druid of the Plains out with Guardian Animals as well. Malagos drawing a bunch of spells, second Nourish, maybe you play a Lightning Bloom, which yes, costs 1 mana to give you 2 and overloads you 2, but the most important turn is that 1 turn right after alignment. And, I mean, you ramped up to 5 mana on turn 1. You play your big cards, you leave your opponent reeling. Let's talk Taunt Druid package, where you've got Mark of the Spike Shell, Razormane Battleguard, and Plague Maul the Rotting. As these cards were getting revealed, it looked like this was going to be the direction of Druid, pushing you towards Taunt, but I'm afraid that I don't think this is the place. I'm giving Mark of the Spike Shell and Plague Maul the Rotting 1 star apiece, and Razormane Battleguard 2 stars. Razormane Battleguard only getting 2 stars because, well, firstly, it is a really good card. And if there were any good taunts, then I would be more solid about this taunt druid thing. But I think there are not enough good taunts to even form a small package using these cards. Too reliant on perhaps certain legendaries. It's too fragile right now. So where Razormane Battleguard at least has some legitimacy over Plague Maul the Rotting certainly, is that you could combine it with Celestial Alignment, where if you play it, your Carnival Clown post Celestial Alignment costs 0 mana, so when you play your 1 mana card, you can corrupt the Carnival Clown. I don't think this will actually be a thing, but it might be amusing. And then you have randomly a Living Seed, 1 star, because what a useless card. So Druid's gonna be in a really good spot. It's actually very similar to when Guardian Animals came out. That's what I see when I see Celestial Alignment. That's the new Guardian Animals. And Celestial Alignment will also have Guardian Animals in its deck. Druid's got a token deck. It's got a Celestial Alignment deck. I think the expansion is going to be great for Druid. Hunter has a number of very promising cards as well. And while this was the other class that I wasn't sure would have a deck in tier 1, I do think that it has a strong possibility of having a deck in tier 1. First bucket that I'm going to pull up is going to be the mid-range bucket. This is also where I think all of the cards see the most playability. Wound Prey, Kolkar Pack Runner, Tame Beast, Pack Kodo, Piercing Shot, and Barak Kodo Bane. Wound Prey and Kolkar Pack Runner I'm giving 3 stars apiece. I do believe these 2 cards go together, as well as alongside Barak Kodo Bane. Barak Kodo Bane I'm giving 4 stars. Barak has a higher chance of being playable than those 2. But I do feel like mid-range Hunter has a decent chance of putting in the Kolkar Pack Runner and the Wound Prey package. They are going to be running a number of cheap spells. And Coldcard Pack Runner is a very, very high payoff card off of cheap spells. Another excellent cheap spell is Tame Beast. That is a very good value card, and it's right in the right mana cost for mid-range Hunter, where you'll probably usually play it at rank 2. 2 mana for a 4/4 Beast with Rush when you're at 5 mana. That looks great. Perhaps you play that alongside your Pack Kodo. Tame Beast and Pack Kodo both 5 stars, by the way. I feel like those two cards are going to be played in pretty much every single Hunter deck. Pack Kodo, really strong 3 mana 3/3 get a card. That is the most pushed that I have seen a card that generates another card. This type of card is best in a mid-range deck because mid-range decks can actually utilize the Beast, the Weapon, and the Secret. Piercing Shot, 4 stars. I believe I'm actually rating this card a little bit under a number of people who think that this card is really, really good. It's not as good as it looks, I'd say. It's meant for face hunters, I suppose, but I'm not that enthusiastic about face hunters, and I'm also not that enthusiastic about this card in face hunters. Flexible in that there's no wasted damage, but the cost for it is rather high. Deceptively looks quite strong, but when you consider that just a spell that strictly deals damage to minions isn't necessarily that good, that said, though, I still think it's going to see play in Face Hunter and possibly Mid-Range Hunter. And then you've got the miscellaneous stuff. Sunscale Raptor, Prospector's Caravan, Tavish Stormpike, and Warsong Wrangler. So I'll just state this right now. All the caravans are getting 1 star. Yeah, just off of the 1/3 body. If you're up against a tempo deck, it's going to be such a bad play. And it's such a high roll required that you need to have the card down on 2 mana. Sunscale Raptor, Tavish Stormpike, and Warsang Wrangler all have a little bit of a theme of like Dire Frenzy. You shuffle a bunch of cards into your deck, you buff them, perhaps you Warsang Wrangler to get a bunch of even bigger beasts. Tavish Stormpike will see play in that type of Beast Hunter deck, but I don't believe the Beast Hunter deck will be that good. Where Tavish Stormpike gets its 2-star rating is I do think it's a reasonable attempt into mid-range Hunter. For the Dire Frenzy type stuff, though, I'm going to give it 1 star for Sunscale Raptor and Warsang Wrangler. I believe where Hunter will find the most success is in... They were doing pretty well with Highlander Hunter. You cut out the Highlander, you put in 2 copies of the good cards, and then you put in more of the good cards like Pack Kodo and Tame Beast. With an outside look at Coldcard Pack Runner and Wound Prey and Barak Kodo Bane, and then possibly throwing in some sort of small spell package. Notably, Barak Kodo Bane will tutor for your Mancrick's wife because that spell costs 3 mana. That could be a major bonus. Mage has some interesting stuff going for it. The current Mage decks of Spell Mage and Secret Mage will continue to see success, and that the new archetype that has a mini theme here will not see success. Let's start with that. That would be the Hero Power theme. Wildfire, Reckless Apprentice, and Mordesh Fire Eye. And I'm giving all of those cards 1 star. If it's not powerful enough, it aims to be some sort of value mage or alternatively a combo mage. But the combo is very unwieldy to pull off, and that just takes way too long. And Wildfire and Reckless Apprentice are both too weak by themselves to see good play. I think that the main problem you have is that if you're playing a value mage, you're basing so many cards around the hero power, and you will get your Mordesh off. Unfortunately, just playing Mordesh isn't good enough. Like, what else are you going to do? That's the main problem with Control Mage, I feel. No clear win condition, and if there is a Control Mage, which there still might be, it probably will just run Cthulhu instead of this package. Now, the exciting cards for Mage are going to be these generally good spells. You've got Ruined Orb, Refreshing Spring Water, and Oasis Ally. 5 stars on all of them. I actually think that Ruined Orb will just see play in every single Mage deck. It's just such a generally good card. Oasis Ally is one of the stronger Mage secrets out there, so you're definitely going to see that in Secret Mage, which I think is going to be an excellent tier 1 deck. And you're even going to see that in Spell Mage. While it's not as certain in Spell Mage, because you might not have that many friendly minions, you do generally have enough that Oasis Ally might be one of your better options for spells. And then in both Secret Mage and in Spell Mage, Refreshing Spring Water is an amazing card where if you're playing at least 15 spells in your deck, Refreshing Spring Water is good because it basically costs net 2 mana to draw 2 cards, which is great. But if you're all spells, or if you're very high mana spells, it could be 0 mana draw 2 cards, which you play on turn 4, which is incredible, and a big boost to the power of Spell Mage. Then you've got the freeze theme. Rhyme Tongue, Varden Dawn Grasp, and Flurry. Flurry and Rhyme Tongue are both 1-star, and I'll also mention Oasis Ally is also a Frost spell, so it does go with Rhyme Tongue, but currently there are just not enough Frost spells to make Rhyme Tongue good enough. And as for Flurry, despite it being 0 mana, I don't believe it is enough impact to actually see play. Varden Dawn Grasp, on the other hand, that might be a card that'll actually see play. Varden Dawn Grasp, 4 stars. I think a decent chance that it's going to see play into the Secret Mage deck, which is an aggressive deck. Frost Nova plus a 1-mana 3/3 is pretty good for Tempo Mage, especially since Tempo Mage previously in some incarnations have just run Frost Nova, and they would definitely have preferred Varden Dawn Grasp. And then you have the final miscellaneous card, Arcane Luminary. 1 star, I just don't really see much use for this card for now, but it's a card to watch out for in the future if Mage generates a bunch of cards. So while I'm not very enthusiastic about the hero power Mage deck, I do think that Spell Mage and Secret Mage, especially Secret Mage, is going to be quite strong. Yes, Secret Mage has lost quite a few things, like the Cloud Prince and like Kirin Tor Mage, which almost seem irreplaceable, but they are getting a very, very strong card, Arcanologist. And they got a good secret, a great secret. So I think Mage definitely has a good amount of hope on both of those archetypes. Next up, Paladin gets a huge new archetype of Secret Paladin. Of course, the big one, Sword of the Fallen, and then its support cards, Galloping Savior, Northwatch Commander, and Cannon Master Smythe. Galloping Savior, 4 stars as a secret that might see perhaps a 1 of in that deck, if at all. 5 stars on the rest of the cards. Sword of the Fallen, absolutely insane. Cannon Master Smythe, just an excellent finisher card. And Northwatch Commander, 3 mana, 3/4 draw card is just very good, of course. But that's not all the cards that Secret Paladin is just putting in their deck. No, there's also 3 other good cards I just have in generally good Paladin cards bucket. You've got Conviction, Knight of Anointment, and Cariel Rome. All 3 of those I'm giving 5 stars. Conviction, absolutely insane. Blessing of Might was good enough to run in most aggro decks. Conviction is 2 Blessing of Mights when you get to 5 mana. For 1 mana. That's really good. Cariel Rome is so strong because 4 mana 4/3 rush with Divine Shield is just such a good stat line, and there's just a handful of cards that you can discount in Secret Paladin, but still good and still somewhat relevant. Where Cariel Rome is even better though is in Libram Paladin. You put that in Libram Paladin for sure. You discount a bunch of Librams, and Knight of Anointment is also 5 stars because 1 mana 1/1 that draws a Libram is quite good. And then you've got the 3 cards that are less exciting. Soldier's Caravan is a caravan. Invigorating Sermon is 4 mana, 2 slow, do nothing. And Veteran War Medic, perhaps if the decks weren't already overflowing with good cards, you might consider this in a Libram Paladin. Basically, it's a decent card, but perhaps it's just not quite good enough. The only card that I'm a little bit hesitant to give a 1-star rating on is Veteran War Medic, just because it is such a stronger Violet teacher, and I am aware that Librams often cost 0, and they are holy. That said though, I just feel like it doesn't quite make the cut, and I'll make the edgier call of giving it 1 star instead of hedging 2 stars. But yeah, Paladin is looking in a great spot. I expect to see both Secret Paladin and Libram Paladin fielding tier 1 decks. Priest is getting a solid set of control cards. I guess we'll just start off with a bad control card since that's faster. There's Soothsayer's Caravan, there's Devouring Plague, there's Priest of Ansha, and there's Power Word Fortitude. And these can be summed up with bad stats for cost. Now the good cards, on the other hand, Desperate Prayer, Condemn, Serena Bloodfeather, Xyrella, Void Flare, and Light Shower Elemental. Desperate Prayer and Light Shower Elemental, 3 stars apiece. Those are cards that I'm not entirely certain will ultimately make the cut in Control Priest, or alternatively you might see one copy of, or alternatively you might see them sometimes be played, depending on how much aggro there are. On the other hand, the cards that I'll always see play, which are why they're 5 stars, are the Condemn, the Serena Bloodfeather, the Xyrella, and the Void Flare. They're just all excellent control cards. Xyrella plus Desperate Prayer can be a 10 damage AoE. Not even just 5 damage, but you could heal your opponent as well and then cause 10 AoE, which is incredible for 4 mana while you're healing yourself for 5. People doubted my initial rating on Serena Bloodfeather, but having played with her and seen her in action a bit, looks like excellent stats for cost at pretty much all stages in the game. Void Flare, just very impressive given the amount of spells Control Priest is expected to hoard in their hand. So wipes out a lot of small boards, and Condemn is also just a very, very strong board clear at a small amount of mana. And in the case that you need to be more anti-aggro, you have Light Shower Elemental and Desperate Prayer healing you even more. As the premier tier 1 control deck versus aggro, especially if you include Light Shower Elemental and Desperate Prayer, I think that Priest deserves a spot among many decks, admittedly, in the tier 1 category. I do feel like there's going to be enough aggro decks out there where Priest will really shine and can tech to be anti-aggro, that it'll get a lot of win percentage by playing against those decks while not just being free loss against the other decks. Rogue's moving in a really interesting direction, and there are 2 major deck archetypes that are supported here. First deck archetype is the Poison deck. Silverleaf Poison, Paralytic Poison, Swine Tusk Shank, and Apothecary Hellbrim. And I think this entire package is 2 stars, and they'll pretty much all be played together or not played, and feel like they'll get enough experimentation and then not be played. This type of deck is very, very strong against control decks and will probably just straight up win against them. However, it takes a while to get going, it is perhaps pretty weak against aggro, and if anyone decides to run Weapon Destruction, your Swine Tusk Shank is just going to get oozed and you'll be really sad. So it's tough building a deck archetype around something that loses when you get oozed. Then you've got just the generally good rogue card bucket here. Wicked Stab, Oil Rig Ambusher, and Scab's Cutter Butter. You're definitely gonna see Wicked Stab and Scab's Cutter Butter in every single rogue deck for the next 2 years, I'll say. 5 stars on both of them. A little bit more speculative is I also believe that you'll see Oil Rig Ambusher in a very large amount of those decks. So I'm giving her a 5 star as well. They are just so efficient, with Scab's Cutter Butter being a -2 mana 3/3, Wicked Stab being 2 mana deal 4 damage, but possibly 6 damage. There are going to be so many decks which have a finisher of just Wicked Stabbing you twice at the end at 10 mana for 12 damage. If you were able to save that much, that's going to be pretty gross. And then Oil Rig Ambusher is yet another source of 4 damage. If you Shadow Step her, you can deal an extra 4. If you Secret Passage into her, you can deal 4. Such a generally good card. Now the extra deck archetype that's included here is the Miracle package, where I'm putting Efficient Octobot and Field Contact in, and I'm rating both of these 5 stars. Field Contact is the new Gadgetzan Auctioneer and it only costs 3 mana, but you can't trigger it with cards that cost 0 because there are no Battlecry cards or combo cards that cost 0. Unless you discount a bunch of cards with Efficient Octobot, and then that'll allow you to cast so many more cards with your field contact. The main field contact generation is going to be Penflinger, and then you cast a 0-cost spell, and then you play Penflinger, and then you cast a 0-cost spell, and then you play Penflinger. In that way, it's actually very similar to Gadgetzan Auctioneer. It's just that each card draw requires 1 mana, and you can play both Penflingers. It does a lot of damage slowly to your opponent over time, but inevitably with the Penflingers. And I think that's actually going to be a very strong deck. And I saved the best for last. Yoink! It's my reveal card. Okay, just kidding, 1 star. Valley Rogue will probably not be a thing. So 3 potential deck archetypes for Rogue. You've got Weapon Rogue, which will be good in a format where there's a lot of control decks, but otherwise probably not good. Better deck against that is the Miracle Rogue, which I think will do quite well against control decks since it's kind of like a combo deck. And the Tempo Rogue also gets a lot of strong tools, just with the generally good cards that are offered to the Rogue class. So Rogue's looking to have some good decks that'll be competing in the tier 1 slot as well. Shaman Land has 2 main archetypes. Let's start with the good archetype, which is Murlocs. Spawnpool Forager, Firemancer Flurgle, South Coast Chieftain, and Nothing Can Stop Us. Oh, and Tiny Finn's Caravan. One of these cards isn't like the others, and it's Tiny Finn's Caravan. The other cards, though, 5 stars. And by the way, these aren't the only cards in this expansion that support this theme. There's also 2 very strong Murloc cards in neutral. But suffice it to say, I believe that these 4 cards, along with the 2 neutral cards, that 11 card package is enough to really make Murlocs quite strong. So I anticipate that the Murloc deck is going to be fighting it out for tier 1. Then you've got the Elemental package. Arid Stormer, Earth Revenant, and Lilypad Lurker. Arid Stormer though, 3 stars. This is the card that may or may not go into the deck with the other 2 cards. Earth Revenant I'm giving 2 stars, and Lilypad Lurker I'm giving 3 stars. You might see Lilypad Lurker just be the one elemental from these 3 that make it into some sort of control elemental deck or value elemental deck. Or it might see play alongside Earth Revenant, which does curve into Lilypad Lurker, and is a good control/value card anyways. Arid Stormer you might see played in perhaps a more aggressive elemental deck, especially combined with the neutral elemental at 1 mana leading into Arid Stormer as a very strong aggro start, but might not be consistent enough to actually see play. The main problem that I see with elementals is they strike me as a value deck. You could also say it's a value control deck, but it just doesn't do the value/control as well as the other classes. It's also possible that Lilypad Lurker will just see play in some sort of mid-range Shaman, and I fear that mid-range Shaman is also lacking comparatively. And then you've got the nature type cards of Chain Lightning alongside Brukan, and I'm gonna give both of these cards 2 stars. Chain Lightning is a good control and or value Shaman card, but it just doesn't feel like Shaman has a good baseline in order to be a control deck. It certainly doesn't seem as good as Priest or Warlock or Warrior to me. And Brukan seems like the type of deck that you would want to have in a control base, and then you'd finish them off in some sort of combo way. Or it can just be played to amplify your AoE. But ultimately, I don't see the control Shaman or the combo Shaman beating out other classes that seem like they can do it better. So I believe that the best hope for a tier 1 Shaman deck here is the Murlocs, and I do believe those will be quite strong. But keep your eye on those elementals, especially in the future. If more elementals get printed, which have even more elemental synergy, or if more control Shaman cards, especially some sort of late game payoff, get printed, I could see that being significantly more viable. Warlock's got 2 main archetypes coming, and as a resident control player, I'm very happy with the control package coming here. You have Bloodshard Bristleback, Tasman Roam, and Barrens Scavenger. And the support cards that go with that would be Altar of Fire, Soul Rend, and Niru Fireblade. The trap that Blizzard wants you to fall into is destroying your own deck so you can activate your Niru and your Barrens Scavenger and your Bloodshard Bristleback faster. But what I believe in is instead you just run the good cards from here. You run the Tamsin and you run the Bloodshard Bristleback, and maybe you run the Barrens Scavenger. And that fits into a Control Warlock core really well, because the card that actually makes this whole deck archetype work, not shown here, is actually Lord Jaraxxus. Changed from setting your health to 15 to instead just simply giving you 5 armor while still doing the same thing. And that is by far the best late game value card that any control deck has. And it's for that reason that Control Warlock holds a very special place as the ultimate big value control deck. So of these cards that I think will be run in the control deck, that would be Bloodshard Bristleback and Tamsin Roam 5 stars and Barrens Scavenger 4 stars. I believe there's enough time to get yourself down to 10 cards and then make a huge comeback with the Bloodshard Bristlebacks and the Barrens Scavengers. What I don't believe in is Altar of Fire and Soul Rend, because you can't risk getting rid of your win condition of Jaraxxus. Soul Rend is a very good anti-aggro card, but I feel like it may not be necessary. And Niru Fireblade, I believe, is interesting, but just not good enough. The other archetype getting supported is another deck archetype that I like, Zoo. A card that could fit into both Control and Zoo is Grimoire of Sacrifice, which I'm rating 2 stars. In Control, there's actually some possibility that you combine this with perhaps Explosive Sheep, and you have a 3 mana deal 4 damage to everything. I don't really put that much stock into it, but possibly. And then in Zoo, you might be using this to kill off your Nerubian Egg, but I also don't think that's that good of a card to put into Zoo. The other Zoo cards are Apothecary's Caravan, Imp Swarm, and Cabal Outfitter. Apothecary's Caravan is a caravan and is too slow, 1 star. Imp Swarm, I actually believed that I was going to put this into my Zoo deck, but Imp Swarm might not be good enough to fit, so that's why it's 2 stars. A card that is good enough to fit though is Cabal Outfitter, 5 stars. What a beast, that's 3 mana for 5/5 worth of stats. I like that amount of stats for the cost. Zoo has been a fairly successful deck, and I don't see any reason why that has to change. It gets an excellent addition in Cabal Outfitter, and if you really want to be spicy, you may be able to position your Zoo to actually beat the control decks as well by just putting Lord Jaraxxus in there. You might outvalue the control decks even though you're playing a Zoo deck. So Warlock's looking good with 2 potential tier 1 decks as well. You got the biggest of the control decks in terms of the ultimate value that Lord Jaraxxus provides. It's the one class that basically gets a Death Knight, so to say, an infinite generation value machine. As well, Control Warlock has Ticketus, which makes Control Warlock an especially good deck for bullying other control decks. And that leads us to Warrior. Control Warrior is always a good deck, almost always a good deck. What may be interesting is that I think there's going to be a split. There's 2 possible ways to build your Control Warrior deck. First off, I'm going to talk about the Frenzy package. Warsong Envoy, Whirling Combatant, Stonemaul Anchorman, and the card that brings back all the Frenzy cards, Overlord Sourfang. Now, Warsong Envoy doesn't quite fit here because it's more of an aggro deck card, and I don't believe that Tempo Warrior is actually going to be good enough this expansion. I'm giving Warsong Envoy a 1 star. But I am giving the rest of the cards 5 stars. I feel like Whirling Combatant is an excellent anti-aggro card. Stonemaul Anchorman is just a generally good card, which will generally kill a card with decent stats on the rush as well as draw a card. Now, Overlord Sourfang is not supposed to be like the big win condition card, but it is just good to bring back your Whirling Combatant and your Stonemaul Anchorman. So this little package together, Whirling Combatant, Stonemaul Anchorman, and Overlord Sourfang, I believe is going to be the way that you build the core Frenzy package. While Overlord Saurfang is best with the Taurajo neutral card, I feel like Taurajo is too slow to play by itself, whereas the other two both serve a good purpose in Control Warrior. Now alongside that Frenzy package, you just have generally good Control Warrior cards. That'd be Ranker, Outrider's Axe, and Morshan Elite. Ranker, you're not going to be running very many minions, so very good Control Warrior tool. Outrider's Axe, that was definitely a very pushed weapon. 4 mana 3/3 and draw 3 cards. Yeah, that's really good. And then you have Morshan Elite, which follows up both Outrider's Axe as well as Sword Eater, and gives you 5 mana for 8/8 worth of taunt. That's just good. Be it Tempo Warrior or Control Warrior. Morshan Elite would be good in either of those decks. So that's a 5-star across the board. Where Morshan Elite is so good is that it might be so good that one type of Control Warrior runs the generic, just good stuff, but one type of Control Warrior might focus on making its win condition be copying up a bunch of Morshan Elites and buffing a bunch of Morshan Elites. So here's the hand buff package. You got Bulk Up and you have Conditioning. I don't believe the Conditioning is necessary. I'll give that a 1-star, but Bulk Up, 5 stars. Bulk Up is simply one of the best hand buff cards that I've ever seen, because Bulk Up will generate you a buffed version of Morshan Elite into your hand, and that Morshan Elite will basically be a 5 mana 2/5/5s with taunt. And on top of that, you have the original Morshan Elite, which is also 5 mana to summon 2/5/5s with taunt, which is obviously an amazing deal. Now where Bulk Up gets really good is if you combine Morshan Elite with Feat of Strength as well. Feat of Strength gets Morshan Elite +5/+5, and then after you bulk up, you might be able to pay 5 mana to get 2 10/10s with taunt. This particular type of hand buffing might work when you really focus it in on one card that'll provide you immense value, and all the parts are just individually good as well. And then you have Rokara. Rokara seems to fit a Tempo Warrior deck or a massive amount of minions Warrior deck, and I just don't really see that type of deck working. Basically, the home for Rokara is actually in a Druid token deck, and I'm not seeing Warrior as fulfilling that type of deck. But it's going to be a cool world for Control Warrior moving forward. They get that nice Frenzy package, they get some excellent Control Warrior cards, they get that nice Axe, and then it's just a debate on how all in do you want to go on this Morshan Elite thing. Do you want to bulk it up? Do you want to Feat of Strength it? Or do you just want to play more solid Warrior cards? And then you've got the neutral cards. This particular set of neutral cards is definitely significantly stronger than neutral cards in the past. A lot of these neutral cards seem even geared towards a specific type of deck. They're neutral, and you could put them in any deck, but in one particular deck, they would do really, really well. For that reason, a lot of these neutral cards are actually going to see play, unlike a lot of different expansions where the neutral cards are kind of a second thought. So I'm just gonna start off with all the 1-star cards so I get them out of the way. Peon, not enough in effect. Heckle, Fang, Hyena, not good enough to overcome the 3 damage, and also I'm not entirely sure a 2/4 for 2 is that good. Oasis Thrasher, kind of the same category as Peon. The effect isn't that strong. I don't think a face deck is going to run River Crocolisk Plus. Sunwall Initiate, this one's a little bit tough to put into the 1-star category, but just barely not good enough. Barrens Trapper, bad stats for the cost. Not entirely sure if this was a 3 mana 3/4 if it would still see play. Spirit Healer, I don't see this type of synergy being useful enough. South Sea Scoundrel, though it's one of my favorite designs of the set, it's just not quite good enough, though it is a consideration. I'd say in mid-range decks still, it's not a top consideration. Injured Marauder, I don't think there's any way to take advantage of the 5/10 stat line here. I don't believe there's a good way of cheating it out in standard. Gruntled Patron, the limit of getting 1 patron per Gruntled Patron just isn't enough. Razormane Raider, not bad for a general card, just not good enough. Barrens Blacksmith. This one actually has a very big effect, but I don't believe there's very many wide decks out there that could go wide and be able to spare enough deck slots to be able to damage your own Barrens Blacksmith. Gold Road Grunt, just not enough stats for the cost. Burning Blade Acolyte, simply too slow, and while Demon Hunter is actually the class that this card's designed for, with a specific legendary that pulls death rattles that are 5 or lower, still I feel like that isn't enough to justify this card. So as you can see, not actually very many 1-star cards. Kindling Elemental is a card that could slide into Mage or Shaman, but ultimately I don't think consistent enough, 2 stars. Lushwater Mercenary and Lushwater Scout. These practically could have been Shaman cards. 5 stars on both. I feel like these are part of the things that make the Shaman Murloc deck in particular so powerful. Just so many good Murlocs coming out this expansion. Far Watchpost, 5 stars. I think it's the less good Watchpost out of the two, but I still think it is annoying enough of an effect that it is kind of effectively taunt, so great card. Talented Arcanist, 2 stars. I feel like there's fringe application for this card across many decks that deal small amounts of AoE damage. Someone out there is bound to try this out. Total Wilds, 3 stars. Most likely going to be played in Druid, but I feel like not consistent enough to make work. The reason why it's 3 stars is because it could see play in a number of decks. It could be seeing play in some sort of control shaman, in some sort of poison rogue, but ultimately I don't feel much success in any of those, but because Total of the Wilds can fit into any of those, 3 stars. Crossroads Gossiper, pretty much handcrafted for Paladin, 5 stars. You can protect it with Oh My Yogg and Noble Sacrifice, so this tends to get really, really big and then hit your opponent really, really hard. Death's Head Cultist, 5 stars. Really good stall tool across many control decks to survive until you get to your ultimate win condition. Just a lot of different control decks could use this. Hog Rancher, I originally had this for 5 stars, but I slowly lowered it to 4 stars. It is just that generally good card that you might want to put into your token druid, your mid-range deck, potentially even your aggro deck. That's very good stats for the cost. Horde Operative, 3 stars. In a world where I anticipate Secret Mage and Secret Paladin to both be tier 1 decks, you just might see the tech card of Horde Operative used, especially with a good stat line on it. Mancrick, 5 stars. Generally good card for mid-range decks. Sometimes you high roll and then you get Mancrick's wife. If you're not looking to just high roll, perhaps you would consider playing this with Barak and Hunter. Also, if you play this in Zoo or any deck that draws a bunch of cards, you'll find Mancrick's wife faster. So great card to put into any deck that tries to win through minion damage, especially ones that draw a bunch of cards. Morshan Watchpost, 5 stars. One of the strongest cards in the set. It basically has taunt, and even worse than has taunt, it has to be killed pretty specifically with a spell, and if they don't have a spell, they're gonna have to kill it with their minions, and if they don't have minions on the board already, they have to play minions, and then you get grunts, and your grunts might kill their minions, and then they're unable to kill the Watchpost. I anticipate that this card will be a source of major frustration for months to come. Possibly could get nerfed. Ratchet Privateer, 3 stars. This looks to me to be very similar to Volpera Toxin Blade, and Privateer is a neutral. That said, I think Privateer will most likely only see play in Rogue, but there's an outside chance in Warrior as well, some sort of aggressive deck with weapons. Decent advantages over Toxin Blade. It's even possible that Privateer will replace Toxin Blade, but certainly possible for both of them to be run together. Venomous Scorpid, 5 stars. Great card for a lot of control and value decks out there. Almost always 2-for-1's your opponent. Blademaster Samuro, 3 stars. Blademaster Samuro is notably good with Warrior and Priest. Warrior, because with Stage Dive, you can deal 3 damage to all enemy minions and 6 damage to the target that Samuro is attacking. Now that's what I call a swipe. On top of that, Priest has a really good combo with Samuro as well. Play Samuro and then you Apotheosis Samuro, and that is, again, 3 damage to all enemy minions, 6 damage to the target, plus you gain life equal to all the total damage you've dealt. That's a lot of health. Basically, Blademaster Somro works with any buff as well. Crossroads Watchpost, 2 stars. Definitely not as good as the other Watchposts. I feel like this card probably will not see play alongside the other 2 Watchposts. It's like a trap. Darkspear Berserker, 3 stars. This is the best Death Rattle for Death Rattle Demon Hunter to pull. But past that, it's just a good mid-range card. Hitlord wasn't really played in Zoo, but Warlock was one of the classes that was least suitable to take damage because their life tap ability uses health as a resource. It's quite possible that Pitlord might have actually seen play in other decks. Darkspear Berserker is a better Pitlord, +1 health, and also it's only Death Rattle to take the damage. So if they don't kill it, you don't take the damage. Kazakus, 5 stars. Any deck that isn't running very many 4-drops is going to try to find any excuse to run Kazakus. But I think there might be a surprisingly low amount of decks that can actually support Kazakus. Across the number of decks that I've built, at least I was able to find 1 deck that'll run it, which would be Midrange Hunter, which doesn't run very many 4-drops. So Kazakus is a great fit there. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to try to find any excuse to put Kazakus in, but most of the time you probably shouldn't. But Trump Laboratories will try anyways. Shadowhunter Vol'jin, 2 stars. This card you've actually already seen played at a significantly higher level than 2 stars, but that's this rotation. The reason why that's actually seeing play is because it can get your Zephrys back. I feel like in the upcoming, this particular meta, there's not very much application for Shadowhunter Vol'jin. Taurajo Brave, 2 stars. I don't believe it is good in the Control Warrior, which has Sourfang, because it is a little bit unwieldy to actually activate the Taurajo Brave the first time around. It costs so much. But if there's a deck that this fits in, it would be in that deck. Cargill Battlescar, 5 stars. The control decks that run the Watchtowers will run Cargill Battlescar as a nice big value card. And I do believe that the Watchtowers are definitely good enough to put into a number of control decks. And then Primordial Protector, 5 stars. I think that Primordial Protector is at its best in Druid. To be exact, it would be the Celestial Druid. This is an excellent card to play for 1 mana. So there you have it, the star review of Forged in the Barrens. So many good cards in this set, and I do believe that all of the classes, except Demon Hunter, are looking very, very competitive. Alongside the huge rotation, I think this new standard is going to shape up very differently. And you're going to see a lot of Forged in the Barrens cards, so that's going to lead to a very exciting time. I'll see you in the crossroads!